In a previous video, we've looked at how you start a vinegar culture from scratch to make your own cider vinegar at home. Today, we're going to look at how you feed a vinegar culture, how you draw off completed vinegar, how you test that vinegar for strength, and how you bottle it. Hello, welcome to English Country Life, welcome to the kitchen, welcome to part 2 of vinegar making. In today's video, what we're going to look at is how to manage an existing vinegar culture. We've shown you in part 1 how to create one, and I'm going to show you today how you feed one, how you draw off vinegar from one which is getting full, how to test the strength of that vinegar, how to get it into bottles ready to use. Let's get going. To illustrate our point today, I've got 3 vinegar cultures. A cider one, a red wine one, which is actually an elderberry wine vinegar culture, and a white wine vinegar culture. The cider culture is full. And a little later, we're going to show how to draw some of that vinegar off and get it ready for use. The red wine culture isn't full, but is quite a mature culture. And what's happened is the wine that's already in there has been converted into vinegar. So if we don't draw that off now, in order to keep the culture alive, what we need to do is add more wine to give the bacteria something to live on. So today we'll show how you introduce more wine into a culture, how you feed that culture. Let's do that first. This is our red wine vinegar culture. And before we start, it'd be good to take a look at the culture itself. You see how thick that mother of vinegar is now in the wine. It's not a problem, but probably in about a month's time I'm going to have to split that, or large chunks of it will begin to separate and sink to the bottom of the wine. Again, if yours does that, don't worry about it. It's not a huge issue, but what it does do, obviously, eventually is the mother starts filling up more and more of the vessel. So you need to remove it periodically, and that's a great opportunity to pass some of that mother on to other people who want to start their own vinegar cultures. This is how I tend to fill one of my cultures. If I tilt the whole culture on the side, the amount of surface increases, and there is an area here where the mother isn't actually now covering the surface of the liquid. And if I float wine down the side of the vessel here, it won't smack on the top of the mother and drive the mother to the bottom of the vinegar, and I can actually just add the wine to liquid rather than hitting the mother of vinegar, which is much better because we don't want the mother of vinegar to sink. So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm pouring liquid onto liquid, just letting that mother gently float. I tend to add, if I'm making a wine vinegar, I will tend to add 1 bottle a month. If I'm making a cider vinegar or a malt vinegar, probably 1 litre a month is sufficient to add. Gently tilt it upright, and as you can see, some of that mother is still proud, still hitting the air, and that will now form another layer of mother right over the top of that wine vinegar. So I've recovered my elderberry vinegar with muslin on the top and a brown paper wrapper just to keep it dark. I'm going to put that in a quiet place, and I'll leave that now for another month. And that mother of vinegar will keep working, turning the remaining alcohol in the wine into vinegar. With this white wine vinegar, it is being a little bit of a pain. The reason it's being a bit of a pain is the mother keeps wanting to sink on this culture. It's not an uncommon thing. So what I'm going to do, having washed my hands, is lift the mother out, float a cork in the middle, and settle the mother onto it. You can see there is actually a hole there where I've done that previously, just to support the vinegar and stop it sinking. I don't like leaving the corks in all the time, but occasionally I find it does improve the quality when you get a mother that has a tendency to sink. And I can now add some more white wine to this culture and keep it going for another month. Having added another bottle of homemade white wine to this culture, I've decided to actually remove some of the mother of vinegar. So I've taken the bottom 2/3 of the layers of mother off and just left a thin layer of the freshest mother of vinegar, which is always the part on the top, floating over that cork in the mixture. And that will re-establish itself and the acetobacteria will get going again, but it hasn't got so much weight on it now, so it's not as likely to get dragged to the bottom of the culture. I think you can see there's not much to keeping a vinegar culture going. Feed it once a month, make sure the mother's floating on the top, 90 seconds every 30 days, job done. I just put a little reminder in my diary to go and check on it, make sure it's happy, and I usually do it around about the first of the month. Now, we didn't set out to feed a vinegar culture, we set out to make vinegar. So let's look at how do we take the vinegar out and test it. Now at the end of any 1 month period, if you want to, you can take out the vinegar that's in your vessel. You don't have to wait for it to be filled, but what will happen, inevitably, as has happened here, if you don't take any vinegar out, you'll get to the point you have to keep feeding the culture. This is the best way I've found for getting the vinegar out of the culture. It's an old wine siphon with a rigid tube on the bottom 30 centimetres and a tap. And I will tilt the vinegar culture to slide the siphon down the side of the vinegar so we don't push the mother to the bottom. Suck on the tap, get the vinegar flowing, put it into a vessel lower down and just siphon off some of the vinegar. As you can see, I'm trying at the angle to slide the siphon tube down beside the mother, not push the mother to the bottom. Now you can see in that first bit of siphoning, what's actually come off is quite cloudy, although the vinegar above looks quite clear, and that's because there's some mother of vinegar that's settled to the bottom of the cider vinegar vessel. I'll show you how to remove that in a little bit. We've drawn off 2 large jugs of cider vinegar, and here we have our culture still with some vinegar in it and rather a lot of mother. Now I'm going to remove some of that mother and pass it on to Liam, who actually wants to start his own cider vinegar making. And then I'm going to add another litre of cider to that culture and we'll just keep it rolling. You can see there was quite a lot of mother in that one. So while it's out, you can just slosh in another litre of homemade cider. And if we wanted to, we could probably just leave it at that and there would be enough remaining acetobacteria to re-establish the culture as it goes. But I am going to put some of the mother back in just to make sure it gets off to a strong start. What I'm doing at this stage is just filtering the vinegar that we've extracted to remove any larger pieces of mother that have come with it. There's nothing unhealthy about mother of vinegar, but what I don't want in the recipes that I'm going to use this in is lumps of cellulose sat in amongst the rest of the recipe. And you can see some fairly big pieces in there. So we're just going to remove those. So we've extracted a jug and a half of great homemade cider vinegar, and that's fantastic. But here's the thing. When you have your own vinegar culture, it's capable Doesn't always do it, but it's capable of producing vinegar that's far stronger than commercial vinegar. Commercial vinegar is about 5% acetic acid, and I've known a vinegar culture produce 10% acetic acid. Now, provided you know that, it's not a problem. You can just dilute it with ordinary tap water back to about a 5% culture. But you've got to check just to be sure. Now, if you've got no fancy materials, honestly, get some ordinary vinegar, taste it on your tongue, get the vinegar you've made, taste that on your tongue, and if you've made it too strong, it's not going to be dangerous at 10% acetic acid, but it's going to make you go, ooh, you know, dilute it a little bit with water, get it to the same sort of strength. I use a slightly more scientific method that costs pennies. Let me show you what it is. What I'm showing you here is a book of little things, little pieces of paper. They're called the Universal Indicator paper, or litmus paper, or pH testing paper. pH is a measure of acidity where 1 is extremely acid, 14 extremely alkali, and 7 is neutral tap water. So 7 is not acid, not alkali, 1 is very acid, 14 is very alkali. And this paper, when dipped in a liquid, changes colour. Red will be pH 1, sort of dark brown is pH 14, and a medium green is pH 7. So we can use a couple of these strips to test the pH of our vinegar against a normal commercial vinegar. I'm going to use a little bit of commercial cider vinegar here. Just a drop, it's far more than I need there already. And I will take one of these indicator strips and I will dip it in the liquid. And you can see it's taken on an orangey colour. With the use of the book, what we can then do is establish whereabouts on the scale we are. And I would argue that is somewhere between 3 and 4 on the scale. So we'll call that pH 3.5. Now that is commercial vinegar. So let's keep that to one side and do the same test with our vinegar. This is our vinegar. Little drop. Take a test strip, dip it in. Give it a moment to develop its colour, and I think it is fairly clear that that is around about pH 4, maybe 3.6, something like that. But it's certainly very close, and even if we ignore the scale, I think we can see that those two colours are nigh on identical. So what that means is the vinegar that we've produced here is the same strength as commercial vinegar. If we were producing something that was coming out at pH 2 or pH 1, we'd need to dilute it a bit to make it palatable. So that's how to tell that your vinegar is the same strength as commercial vinegar. It's not dangerous if it isn't, but it can be unpalatable if it's over acid. Now, if we want to get peak self-reliant, I can show you how to make a solution using red cabbages and bicarbonate of soda to test the strength of your vinegar, to effectively titrate the pH of your vinegar. If anybody really wants to see that, hit me up in the comments down below and I'll do a short video on how to make homemade litmus solution. Perfectly possible. Honestly, those books of little test strips cost a couple of quid. Generally, once you've got your vinegar culture rocking and rolling and you're repeating it and you're using the same mother, you're going to know what strength it comes out. It's only when you establish a new culture that it's worth testing right from the get-go to make sure that this culture is not producing some absurdly strong vinegar. Now the next stage is to consider whether you want a live vinegar or a pasteurised vinegar. And people will tell you, oh, you want to leave it live. Well, okay, let's think about that. If you leave live mother of vinegar in your vinegar, then it is possible it will, if there's alcohol left, that it will continue to consume that alcohol, it will get stronger, it will create a layer, a thick layer of white mother of vinegar in your vinegar in the bottle. That doesn't bother you, not a problem. But it can happen. Now it's less likely to happen with cider vinegar than with wine vinegar, because obviously the original liquid has less alcohol in it inside of than wine does. So generally, your mother will have consumed all the alcohol out of cider. But, you know, these things happen. If you want to pasteurize it, simply pop your vinegar in a saucepan, raise it to boiling point and allow it to cool. And that will kill the mother of vinegar that's contained within the liquid. So what we've made there is 3 large bottles of live high quality cider vinegar with mother in. I invite you to have a quick look what that would cost you to buy. It's cost us nothing to make. And let's have a think about some of the videos we put up this year. We've shown how to graft your own apple trees, how to take the fruits of those apple trees and make your own cider, and how to take your homemade cider make your own vinegar. Fairly shortly, we're going to show you how to take that vinegar and use it to make condiments for the table. Homemade mustard, homegrown homemade mustard, for example. And I think when you've been doing this self-reliant stuff for a while, you do realise it's not so much pockets of skills, the whole thing meshes together. And you realise it is perfectly possible to live a comfortable, self-sustaining, self-reliant life without it being an enormous chore. Anyway, if you've enjoyed today's content, can you spare 5 seconds? Give us a thumbs up down below. If you can leave us a comment, that's even better. If you want to see any of the upcoming stuff, grow your own jar of mustard, for example, hit subscribe and the bell next to it and you'll hear every time we upload a new video. But whatever you do, come back and see us soon. Take care.